Hi guys. A lot of times you'll hear people saying things like Hindus are second class citizens in India. In India, Hindus have lesser rights than minorities, or that Hindus have more rights in the West than here in their homeland Bharat, etc. But I think a lot of people who say these things only have a rough understanding of exactly how unfairly the system is stacked against Hindus. They don't know or remember the exact details. So today in this video, I will make a concise, precise and a short gist of the examples of legal discrimination by a so-called secular state against just one religion, namely Hinduism, which might make you conclude that Hindus aren't really second-class citizens in India, but in fact, they are ninth-class citizens. As you know, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, who is a researcher in the field of molecular medicine in JNU, he has had this theory that Hindus are in fact 8th class citizens, and today we'll get to discussing how he concluded during the recent Jaipur Dialogues political discourse seminar that Hindus might be in fact 9th class citizens. Now obviously some people even before listening to this video will conclude that none of this matters because after all Hindus are a numerical majority in Bharat. But why that's a baseless argument I have discussed in my recent video called Invisibilizing Bharat. Spoiler alert, Brahmins were never a numerical majority, nor were Muslim invaders, nor were European colonizers. Anyway, go through that video to understand why numerical majority does not matter in these things. Anyway, today I shall gather all the points mentioned by Dr. Ranganathan in one place and back it up with citations. Firstly, control of Hindu temples by the government. The law of the land, which is common and uniform throughout the country, across all states and union territories for the religious minorities, is not so for the Hindu majority. This anomaly is clearly evident from the fact that the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act is not uniform across the country. In a secular country, which is supposed to have equal respect for all religions, how can a state have control of only Hindu temples and not other religious worshipping places? How come the HR and CE Act is enacted in some states and not so in some other states? So you see, only Hindus cannot use the funds from their institutions for the specific betterment of their own followers, but every other religion in India has that right to do exactly just that. Here's a report from the Hindustan Times from just last month, 2nd September 2022. It reads that while the PIL raised the issue of Hindus being singled out, with the state governments managing temples and their earnings, the top court raised doubts over the necessity of revisiting the 1863 Religious Endowments Act when the legislation has facilitated temples to cater to quote-unquote larger needs of the society. The bench of Chief Justice of India, CJI, Uday Umesh Lalit and S. Ravindra Bhatt asked, quote, "What is the need for this? This has been functioning for such a long time. If it is a receipt of the temple, it is by the people, so it has to go back to the people. Take the example of Tirupati. You have colleges there, universities are set up in Delhi by state enterprises. What's wrong with that?" End quote. Second example would be the Places of Worship Special Provisions Act of 1991. One of the most draconian laws in this list of Hindu-phobic things we are going to discuss today. To quote Dr. Ranganathan himself, quote, "How can you deny 1 billion people their legitimate right to legally take back what is theirs?" End quote. This act on the one hand prohibits the conversion of any place of worship as it existed on the 15th of August 1947, but also asks to provide for the maintenance of the religious character of any such place of worship. So not only can't Hindus seek legal recourse and submit historical evidence to reclaim their temples destroyed by Abrahamic invaders and colonizers, they also have to maintain them. And remember, this law was passed under the then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. Now, before someone says what happened in the past is in the past, let it go. I'd like to remind people that there are countless pieces of historical evidence which proves that these things were done to specifically insult Hindus and to make them feel like a defeated society. Which is why the Hindu-phobic section of the Indian society even today rejoices at the fact that a shivling is inside a well where people wash their mouths. And also, I'd like to quote Kavi Guru Rabindranath Tagore in this matter. He writes, quote, "Everyone can happily bow in front of that which is bigger than us and comes out through worship. It's not disturbing. Where Qutub Minar of Delhi stands like a mudgal in the heart of artistic creation of an ancient Hindu king, that arrogance pains the mind. Then in the mosque built by Aurangzeb in Kashi to disrespect Hindu worship, I don't see any beauty nor sacredness." End quote. This is from page 101 of his book Japan Jatri, written in 1919. You can find the exact Bengali quote on the community tab of this YouTube channel, from which I made the English translation myself. Third example in this list would be the fact that about 7 lakh Hindus of Kashmir were kicked out, forced out, ethnically cleansed out from Kashmir but cannot return home. And those who didn't run away from Kashmir were obviously either forced converted or murdered or raped, or maybe all three of those things. Here's a report from the Business Standard from 9th December 2019. A bench of Chief Justice J.S. Khehar and Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said that almost 27 years have passed and it will be very difficult to gather evidences in cases of murder, arson and looting which had led to mass exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley. Quote, "Your petitioner sat over it for the last 27 years. Now tell us from where the evidence will come." End quote, the bench said. But remember, according to reports of even Al Jazeera, approximately 5,000 Rohingyas have found settlement in Kashmir. So, to quote Dr. Ranganathan again, Kashmiri Hindus may be Jews, but India is not Israel. Fourth example would be the Waqf Act, of course, which is in a close competition with the Places of Worship Act in how draconian it can get. Chartered accountant Rajiv Gupta writes on the opinion page of Times of India on 26 September 2022 that, quote, "Waqf Act was first passed by Parliament in 1954. Subsequently, it was repealed and a new Waqf Act was passed in 1995, which gave more powers to Waqf boards. In 2013, this act was further amended to give unlimited powers to Waqf boards to snatch anyone's property, which even could not be challenged in any court of law. In March 2014, just before the commencement of Lok Sabha elections, the Congress gifted 123 prime properties in Delhi to Delhi Waqf Board by using this law. Due to this black law, thousands of acres of land of Hindus have been snatched away in the country so far. Recently, Tamil Nadu Waqf Board has declared 6 villages of Tamil Nadu, including a 1500-year-old Hindu temple, as Waqf property." End quote. Columnist Shashank Saurav writes in the Daily Pioneer on 24th September 2022 that, quote, "This law has become a tool to grab the assets and innocent people are harassed due to its draconian provisions. The Act empowers the Waqf Board to declare any property as Waqf property based on the survey carried out by its team. If this is not enough, Section 6 specifies that the aggrieved party has to appeal to the tribunal constituted under the Act, and there is a limitation period of 1 year for raising the dispute. This legislation is drafted in such a way that it is not necessary for the board to give a notice to the person whose property is sought to be declared as Waqf property, and if the aggrieved party has not litigated within a period of 1 year, then he has no legal recourse." End quote. And if you want some detailed but short and entertaining explanations of the Waqf Board's actions, I suggest you check out the video called Your House Can Become a Mosque by the YouTube channel called Bhardwaj Brothers. The fifth example is the Sabrimala judgment of 2018. The Constitution Bench allowed the entry of women irrespective of age into the Sabrimala temple on the grounds that the ban violated the fundamental right of freedom of religion as per Article 25 of the Constitution, even though there are many Hindu temples where men are not allowed, and there are other Sabrimala temples where women are allowed. Sixth and seventh in this list is combined, that is, the Right to Education Act of 2009 in context of Article 30 of the Indian Constitution. For full details on this issue, you will have to check out Swarajya's article called How Hindu Rights Have Been Seriously Damaged by Article 30 and RTE Act, published on 19th December 2019, but here are our few examples. Minority-run institutions need not reserve 25% of the seats under the Right to Education Act. Conversely, Hindu schools have to do so. The RTE was held to be valid by the Supreme Court in the Pramati Educational Society case in 2014. Next, screening or selection of students for that 25% quota. Majority-run institutions are not allowed to do this screening, but no restrictions on minority institutions. Next, teacher appointment in case of majority-run institutions has to be as per qualifications prescribed by the state government, but in case of minority-run institutions, full autonomy. Then, 100% compliance from majority-run institutions required in terms of infrastructure requirements of the school, but not applicable to minority-run institutions. If aid provided, then no religious instruction is allowed in majority-run institutions, but no such restrictions in minority-run institutions, etc., etc., etc. Eighth in our list is the Communal Violence Bill, which got shot down, but I fear will come in effect if someday UPA or something like that comes back to power. So what is this bill? This is from an Op India article called From Masuka to Communal Violence Bill, The Dangers of UPA 3 Can Be Unimaginable, published on 21st February 2018. It says, quote, in 2005, UPA 1 introduced a communal violence bill. In 2011, under the guidance of the NAC, UPA 2 introduced a revised draft of the same. Although the bill had to be dropped in 2014, grounds for its withdrawal were primarily due to the concerns about overlap with powers of the state government, which is why even Trinamool and CPIM opposed it. However, the truly worrying parts of the bill are not related to who exercises control, but the starkly communal and draconian provisions it had. In the 2005 version of the bill, any group that has become a victim of communal attacks could seek redressal. However, in 2011, a new definition of the group which is protected was introduced. Now, group means a religious or linguistic minority in any state in the Union of India or scheduled castes and scheduled tribes within the meaning of clauses 24 and 25 of Article 366 of the Constitution of India. End quote. Thus, only minorities and SC/STs could be victims, and the perpetrators of communal violence would always be the majority, which is Hindus. The definition of offences itself was so wide. Any sort of crime could be brought under the ambit of this act. End quote. So basically, कुछ भी हो जाए, दोष हिंदू का है. And finally, naming of roads and institutions after barbarians and mass murdering invaders. From Aurangzeb, who killed about 4.6 million people, to Tipu Sultan, examples are plenty and you know it. I'll just end this list with one painful example. You know who destroyed our great Nalanda University, right? Bakhtiyar Khilji. Do you know where is the place called Bakhtiyarpur? Just an hour and 45 minutes drive from Nalanda's ruins. So I would like to end this monologue with another quote from Kabiguru Rabindranath Tagore, from the collection called Original Works of Rabindranath, Volume 24, page 375, Vishwabharati publication, 1982. He writes, quote, there are two religions in earth which have distinct enmity against all other religions. These two are Christianity and Islam. They are not just satisfied with observing their own religions, but are determined to destroy all other religions. That's why the only way to make peace with them is to embrace their religions. End quote. Jaya, Jaya.